You hear it often said that everyone has to start somewhere. Everybody starts from ground zero, just square one, if you will. And I guess that today's guest is no exception. His name is Michael Harvey Johnson, and he's actually relatively new to the audiobook narration space, but something stood out to me, not just his voice and his ability to deliver as an audiobook narrator, but his ability to actually put together his own sound booth. This is a guy that really learned how to do it himself and really grind it out. So I am just ecstatic to share with you folks a relatively new audiobook narrator. You can actually find his profile over on Audiobook Creation Exchange. I'll leave a link for that inside the show notes. So let's go ahead and let's do a deep dive into how he set up his audiobook narration booth. What were some of the troubles that he ran into? And of course, why did he break into this business? Without any further ado, let's get into the interview. All right, Mike, I am absolutely fascinated by what you're sitting in right now. This is really, really cool. I got to tell you that I'm trying to do my own little rig here for recording audiobooks. But before we kind of get into that room and the work that went into it, what drew you into doing narrating for audiobooks?
Because I love the sound of my own voice. It's the best thing ever, Dale. You just have no idea. No, when I was a teenager, I wanted to be a radio disc jockey, and I knew that like anybody knows anything about their future. You just, that's what I'm going to be. And that was my plan until I went to university, as they say up here in Canada, because you don't go to college here, you go to university. Sounds better? I don't know. But figured out pretty quickly that being a radio disc jockey, while it might be fun, really doesn't contribute what I want to the world. It wasn't doing anything for anybody. And then on a more pragmatic level, didn't pay particularly well unless you were just one of those, Howard Sterns of the world that hit the jackpot as far as just having the right message at the right time and the right personality to make it work. Most of the folks that work in radio and TV aren't really making that much money. And they're typically kind of gypsies or having to bop around from job to job, which at that time didn't appeal to me either. So made the change to speech therapy. It's been a great career. But there's still something about, I like performing. I wouldn't say I'm particularly good at it when it comes to auditioning for plays and the like. No, I'm not the person that's going to get the lead. But, a character actor now and again, yeah, I can fill in the blanks. And then when it came to audiobook narration, it was just a matter of looking at what can I reasonably set up on my own with my level of inexperience and my level of technical expertise, which is, you could argue, is better than the average 60-year-old, but nevertheless, as you see, it can be difficult at times anyway. So I figured out I could make it work. YouTube's a wonderful source of information. Got people out there that can help you out. And as far as setting up an inexpensive sound booth to do stuff, it's not that difficult to do, especially if you do it different than I did, which by that I mean I wish I would have asked more people for help than I did. It's just one of the, I guess I want to do it myself. So if I were to offer anybody advice, is don't do it the way I did it. Ask the people who've actually done it, and take advantage of the fact that most people like for other people to be successful. The truly nice people in the universe are happy to share their knowledge and experience and have other people do well as a result of the things that I did right or the things that I did wrong. So
yeah, I think you and I share that so much in common that it's like we'll just do it wrong until we get it right and then go, well, we probably should have asked somebody.
Yeah. And the kicker is I have no excuse, because I've met people in my life, a former father-in-law of mine, I refer to him as God, because the guy always seemed to have all the answers, and it didn't matter what mess I'd get myself into, I'd call him up, and even if he didn't know, he would say, well, I don't know, but you could try it, da-da-da-da-da. And invariably something he would suggest would work. And I would marvel at that in my 20s and 30s, and how in the hell does he know all this? And then I got to my 40s and realized it's because he'd already been through it. He already knew, he'd already experienced either that or something close to it. And those people are just invaluable. Take advantage of that. Don't, like Dale's saying, don't be like us. Ask people who actually know. And like I say, the truly good people are more than willing, in fact, eager to help you out.
Okay, so our audio podcast listeners can't appreciate where you're in right now. You're in a sound booth that you've created yourself. Mm-hmm. Take me through the whole process of setting up your own sound booth. What was the setup like? What was the investment that you put into it? Share all the details. Spare nothing.
Talk and talk. That's what you're telling me to do.
Yeah.
All right, if you insist. No, the first incarnation, whatever, of Trainwreck was a closet at a house that I was renting, and the room was literally 4 foot by 4 foot, which the advantage to that is soundproofing and getting a good dead sounding space, no echo, no real noise at all, was easier to do. The downside to it was a closet that was 4 foot by 4 foot, and so there was just enough room for the computer, the monitor, the desk, and a chair. There wasn't much room, and it also tended to get really warm really quick, and so I could go for about 20 minutes at a time before I'd have to stop and open the door and gasp and God, I'm sweaty, this is horrible. The advantage of that was it really didn't do any structural changes. So if you're a renter, you don't have the option to put up walls or really to do much of anything. So, my solution was to tack the acoustic foam that you see in most people's studios, and then throw rugs, whatever I had handy, I tacked to the door, tacked to the walls. And like I say, I ended up with a fairly reasonable dead sounding space. Now, of course, the downside was that wasn't really shutting out any noise from the outside. So if the neighbors, because there was a basement flat in the house, and we had a lovely couple that lived downstairs from me that were prone to getting drunk and fighting with each other and slamming doors. And they had a playlist of the songs that they played every time. So anyhow, the point being, you can't really shut out the noise very well. I was in a fairly quiet neighborhood, so I didn't have to deal with fire trucks and the like. So it was just mostly the downstairs neighbors that were a problem. So it became a matter of just learning how to time it. There were certain times a day where I could depend on the husband being out and the wife being passed out. So you get to know your limitations. Then I moved to where I am now, which afforded me, it was a new house, and so the basement's unfinished, so I could do whatever the heck I wanted. So I,
Nice.
know basic wood framing of walls, which is, again, you can look it up on YouTube and see how to do it. It's, measure it, cut it, screw it together, put it up, and, does it have to look perfect? No, because it's just for you. So, you're going to notice things not being square or, things not being quite perfect. But as far as how the room performs, doesn't have any impact at all. You can see, in here I've got one wall with acoustic foam up, but then this wall behind the curtain here is just nothing more than the insulation for the basement. The curtain really doesn't have any effect on the sound. It doesn't absorb any sound, doesn't do jack all. It just looks a whole lot nicer than the pink insulation behind the plastic wrap. So anyhow, and then as far as the equipment goes, I was using my old laptop. It's not like the technology that you need is real intense. It's a fairly simple bit of recording software that you can use, whether you're using Audacity and I'm drawing a blank on all the others. You would know, Dale, some other examples of the recording interfaces. But again, it's, if I can say the learning curve wasn't too steep, then it wasn't too steep. It's just a matter of puttering around. And like I say, take advantage. YouTube has all kinds of instructional videos on how to use Audacity and get what you need done. And then as far as okay, so that setup wise, I think does that pretty much cover it all, Dale? Is there other?
Yeah. What was the costs like for all of like the raw materials for you?
Yeah. I had a budget in mind and
Okay.
blew that to heck, as you might imagine, but not really that bad. I think if a person were a little more, if you're efficient at planning out what you want to do beforehand, you're more likely to stay within a budget. Whereas I had a rough idea, and if you saw the drawings I made, they're pretty rough. I think I ended up spending around $1,000, between $1,000 and $1,500, I think, somewhere in that neighborhood. The majority of which was the wood and the insulation. When it came to sound treating the room, up here in Canada, they have this kind of like a sheet of like a plywood shaped sheet, and they call it Sonopan, and it's a acoustic tile. It's not super expensive. I'm thinking it was like $29 for a 4-foot by 8-foot sheet, which I only needed a couple to do because I really only have 2 walls. I put it back in the corner of the basement, so I just have the wall in front of me and then the doorway over to the side here, and that's it. So and I did that on purpose. I did want to, we had a little alcove in the back of the basement. I wanted to use that, but technically it's got plumbing back there for a bathroom, and Lisa didn't want me to steal that space for a studio. And most generally I find if it's a question between whether I'm right or she's right, I tend to take her. So I put it back in this corner. So if you plan it out right, you can make it so that you're not having to build 4 separate walls. You just have to do 1 or maybe 2. If you have the freedom, like I have here, to mangle the house any way you want, then you can spend as much or as little as you want. But yeah, I'm pretty sure it was minimally $1,000. I was hoping to keep it between $500 and $750. So like I say, I blew it, but some of that was just poor planning on my part and lack of experience. Again, if I had talked to somebody ahead of time, it probably would have gone better.
Understandable. Now, how does it compare from being in this new studio that you've created versus the old closet? Are you able to breathe a little bit better? Are you able to stay in there for longer periods of time?
Oh yeah, it's, for one thing, the air conditioning in this house is also, the basement's also air conditioned, so it doesn't get nearly as warm down here. So yeah, I can stay in here for hours at a time. I don't, because I have attention deficit, and that's impossible. I can't stay in one room for that long. But from the standpoint of comfort and equipment, I've got some room to move around a little bit, which, if you're doing audiobook narration, especially if you're getting into some of the more physical characters, if you're doing fiction, you kind of need some room to move, because if you're doing a performance, it's not a static kind of thing. That's not how we talk. That's not how people sound. So you've got to have some room to move. No, I don't move like that when I'm reading. Maybe I should.
Yes.
Am I?
Flapping his arms around.
Yeah. Nope. Not gonna do it. So it's just, there's more room. It's a 4x6 room, which I know I said the other place was 4x4, but the way it's arranged is different. There's, like I say, there's more room to move, and I can sit, I can stand, either or, and do it comfortably, which is important, because you get into the book reading, if you're not comfortable, it's going to wear your butt down. And if you can't give yourself enough room or way to get, like, you notice how I'm sitting here, straight up and down. I'm not, I can't read a book like this in this position. I'm not going to last long. My voice is going to fade pretty darn fast. You watch any good opera performers, and what you will always see is good rock solid bass, from their diaphragm on up. And if you don't have that, you're vocally, you're not going to last. You're going to find yourself being frustrated. And for those people that really, like for me, it was more of a hobby. But if you're somebody who's really intent on, I want to make enough money at this that I don't have to get another job, then you're going to have to take care of these little, nitty gritty things like comfort, posture, positioning, all that stuff. So in general, it's a lot more comfortable.
Good.
Yeah.
Now, as far as the equipment goes, so you've talked about the investment of building out your own little whisper booth there. What is the equipment that you're currently using as far as, because you mentioned Audacity, so what about microphone, audio interfaces, computer? What are the things that people can look out for, and what are you currently using?
Well, currently I've got as far as a microphone interface, I've got the Behringer Euphoria UMC 2020 HD. Most decent microphones, you're going to have that interface. You do have some, microphones that have just a USB plug into the computer, and you get what you pay for there. The quality is going to be, and what you'll find is it's very limiting in what you can accomplish. So you're better off, like I've got the Rode microphone here that a good friend of me passed on when he didn't want it anymore. Before that, I had just a cheap Chinese, I think, Neewer, which sounds really chintzy. Actually, it was a pretty good microphone, and it worked just fine. Between the two, the Rode is a lot more sensitive, and from that standpoint, I have to be a little more, conscientious about where my settings are. So I've got the interface, I've got the microphone, I've got the cheap microphone boom. If I were to make any suggestions on that one, is invest in a decent microphone boom. I've got, basically bottom of the line cheap stuff, and it gets kind of aggravating. It makes a lot of noise. You never really get it in the position that you want. I see you nodding your head there. You're like, yeah.
I know it all too well.
Yeah, if you don't have a good boom, you never get it. And again, it's important to get that microphone in the right spot, because if I'm, doing this kind of thing, it's not comfortable, and again, you won't last very long. Computer-wise, I've got a monitor that I bought off of Facebook, off of somebody, for $40.
Nice.
Actually, I bought 4 monitors for $40. I didn't know that it said 4 monitors. I figured it was $40 for one of the 4, and I got there and they're like, "Oh no, you're taking all this shit. Get it all out of here." Oh, okay. I gave one to my brother-in-law, and I still got 2 upstairs. If you want, they're square, but they work just fine.
I'll come visit you in Canada. I'll get another one from you.
Hit the road! And then computer-wise, like I said, I was using a laptop. Now I've got this little mini computer that was like $200 on Amazon, which, from the standpoint of when I've used it for recording for audiobook narration, is just fine. For being for live streaming and stuff like this, I'm having a little bit of troubles with it. It tends to be kind of temperamental and just randomly gacks and shuts down on me. So from the standpoint of, did I save some money? Is it really cute as hell? Yeah, it's like this, this big a square, about that thick, and I've got it screwed to the back of the monitor, so it's minimal space, no sound at all. So if you're if you have a computer, one of the problems you can have is the fans being noisy. The upside to this little mini one is the fan on it is so tiny that you can't hear it running at all. And if you've got a sensitive mic, that can be an issue. Like I say, it would be fine for narration. I wouldn't recommend it for what we're doing right now. But it could be something I'm doing wrong too, which I'm going to do some research on when we're done here and see if it has to do with the settings. Maybe I've just, got it set up in such a way that that's why it's perpetually going,
What do you think is the most common misconception that authors have of audiobook narrators?
Oh boy, I have no idea what they want, and I guess that kind of hits it on the head there as far as being a book narrator is communicating with that author and finding out exactly what it is they do want, because it's going to vary wildly from one author to the next as far as what they picture a character sounding like, what the dynamics are between the characters. And as much as possible, I try to, read through it and then find out, do you have any ideas? Because if you do, tell me before I go through. And then, of course, with like ACX, they want you to do a short section of it first and submit it, and the author listens and either tells you, yeah, you're right on target, or not so much. But I guess it's all about the communication with the artist, because that book is like a business. It's their baby, and so it's got a very personal connection to that person. And as a narrator, it's impossible for me to guess what it is. I can. Well, I guess it's not impossible for me. I can guess, but the odds are pretty good that I'm going to miss the mark on something.
Yeah. Yeah, so communication is probably going to be the key. Rapid fire for me here. What are your favorite niches to narrate right now?
Well, at heart, I'm a history nerd.
Okay.
I figured that out a few years back. So nonfiction, I enjoy. I find that entertaining. But I've done some science fiction, some fantasy stuff, and I enjoy that too. I find that to be fun. I guess I think I told you, Dale, about an experience where I had a supposed author offer on this, PhD dissertation, and it was on some pretty intense material, and that came back to bite me on the butt. It was entertaining to read from the standpoint of there were times when I knew Lisa was outside listening to me, and I imagine her eyes were kind of, what the? Because it was all about how women are perceived in pornography, and so it was all these like really raunchy titles of all these different. And I kept it serious, and I went through all that, and they ended up getting stiffed on the whole deal, which is probably an unfortunate choice of words on my part, talking about a dissertation. Oh,
well, boy,
it really stuck me with that one.
Yeah, I really feel like this is almost the best note to finish on. But I always like to wrap up each one of my guest interviews with something that I ask them, and that is, what advice would you give to any aspiring authors or self-publishers out there?
Authors and self-publishers, again, that book that you've written is your baby, and people should respect that, and you should have certain expectations, but it's up to you to make sure that your narrator understands what you're looking for, and communicate that. Don't wait for us to figure it out. Tell us what you're looking for, and if we're not hitting the mark, it's like if anybody who's ever done any theater or performance knows, you get notes. And what are the notes? The notes are what you're doing wrong or what you should change. And so, I think that's a lot of authors probably just aren't accustomed to offering constructive criticism on what we're doing or how we're doing it. And so if you're looking to publish something and you've got a narrator, it behooves you to, don't worry about, don't worry about hurting. Yeah, I want you to worry about hurting my feelings. I'm a sensitive person. But ultimately, if you're paying me for a service, I feel a lot better if I give you what you're looking for. I want it to come out the way you want it to. I want it to be something that you're proud of. Lord knows if you've ever written a book, and Dale, I know you have, there's a sense of accomplishment that you get with writing a book that you don't really get with much of anything else in life. It takes a certain amount of courage and determination that, frankly, I haven't demonstrated the ability yet in my life. The idea of writing a book is just daunting. I get this deer in the headlights look. Reading a book? I'm your man. Writing a book? I don't want to do that.